Okay, we're recording. Hello, everyone. Today is December 19th, 2019. This is the final webinar of the year, actually of this decade, because that's very exciting. Somebody shared that with me earlier. I didn't realize this was a new decade, or next week will be a new decade. My name is David Holliday. I'm NSC's Vice President. I think most of you probably know me. Today's webinar topic is focused on assessment. And we have some great panelists that are here to present on various aspects of assessment relating to your NSC program. I will remind everybody, all the participants, that if you have questions or if you have comments, please use the chat window. So at the bottom of your screen, in the Zoom window, there's a little chat button. You can type in questions either for the entire audience, just for the panelists, or for a private message for somebody else that's logged in. So please feel free to contribute questions or comments at any time, and we'll take those as they come in. I'm going to turn it over and actually allow each of our panelists to introduce themselves, if that's okay. Deborah, do you want to say hello?
Hi, everyone. Deborah Sanborn, NSC President. I start to say Vice President. Excited to talk about assessment today. The assessment committee was one of the first things that I helped put in place when I became the Vice President of NSC back in 2014. So obviously this is near and dear to my heart, being able to tell the good story we do with NSC. So look forward to sharing with you today.
Wonderful. Robert, do you want to go next?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Gerard. I am the Graduate Assistant for Iowa State's NSC office, and I'm really excited to be here.
Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Allie Severson. I am the coordinator at Iowa State University and also am chairing the NSC Assessment Committee this academic year. And I'm also going to introduce our first guest speaker. Matt Pastilli is also here, and he graciously agreed to talk with us today for about 20 minutes and take questions. So he's the Director of Assessment and Research at Iowa State University and was also just elected to the Board of Directors of the National Student Affairs Assessment Leaders. So I've learned a lot from Matt, and I feel like he explains this in a really exciting way. And so I'm really happy that he agreed to talk with us for a while. So I'm gonna pass it to Matt with that. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Allie, and thanks, everybody. Let me go ahead and pull up my slides. And I'm not seeing anybody with any gasking faces on their faces, so apparently you're looking at my slides. So thank you for having me here today. It's really my pleasure. And thanks, Allie, for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. Really, it's the importance of assessment today, right? And so really what I'm hoping that at the end of the day, at the end of the 22 minutes-ish that we're going to talk today, you should be able to define some common terms. And for the record, there will not be a quiz. There won't be a test. This will all be on your honor and on your back-end systems, please. So just make sure that you're hopefully picking up some of these pieces, that you're able to define some common terms, that you're able to talk about an assessment cycle. I'm going to show you the one that we espouse here at Iowa State. You are more than welcome to use it. You're also welcome to ignore it and use your own, whatever works best. And then also be able to hopefully talk a little bit about different methods of assessment. So when we talk about assessment, it's good to just have a good base definition for it. This one comes from Upcraft and Shue. If you're a scholar in student affairs, if you've ever studied student affairs, if you've ever read anything about assessment in student affairs, you've read one or both of these scholars. And really at the end of the day, what we're talking about is an effort to gather, analyze, or interpret evidence. So we're picking up information. It's simply that. It's all about information. It is a highly objective process that allows us to look at institutional, divisional, or agency effectiveness. Put differently, assessment describes effectiveness and guides good practice. It's really all about figuring out what it is that we're doing and is what we're doing effective. On the other side of the assessment coin is often this term of evaluation. They are not the same thing. Evaluation is the process of determining the merit, worth, and value of the information that we've collected. So assessment's about getting the information, and it's getting that number. It's getting that 3.6 out of 5. It's not putting a value on it. It's not saying it's good or bad. It's just saying we're at a 3.6. Then you move into the evaluation side and say, well, do we like that 3.6? Is it where we want to be? Is it within range? Is it high? Is it low? That's where the subjectivity comes into play with evaluation and assessment. And when we do program evaluation, or why should we do evaluations, and this is, I think, where you're trying to get at with your own individual programs, is trying to get to a way of informing the decisions that you make both locally and nationally, clarify options that are available to you, identify spaces where you can improve the work or enhance the work that you're doing, and then ultimately provide back out to your constituents and your stakeholders. So your campus leaders, your students, the students you want to get into your program, the folks who have been through the program, et cetera. Give them back that information to tell them how you're doing, how NSC is doing, what NSC is doing, where those positive places are, where those areas for growth and enhancement exist, and being able to describe where it is that you want to go in the fullness of time. A word that's come up a couple of times here that I just want to spend a second on is effectiveness. And this notion of effectiveness gets us back to our learning outcomes, our cost effectiveness, whether or not the extent to which folks are satisfied with what we're doing, the needs of our constituents and our stakeholders, and our alignment with both of our across the board. So the extent to which our assessments align with our programs and align with our objectives, align with institutional mission and vision, departmental mission and vision, all of those alignment components. We want to make sure that we have some semblance of being able to draw a thread all the way from the top of the organization, all the way through nearly every program that we deliver or ever offering that we put out there, to be able to show that they're tied together and that one reinforces the other. This also allows us to compare outcomes with other entities. So especially for the campuses that are engaging in national student exchange, it's really important that you're able to look at yourselves, not just at that global standpoint across from the home office, right? It's really important that you're also getting it to a point where you are comparing your outcomes against other like institutions or similar institutions. At the end of the day, why do we do assessment? Because it tells us what we do. It tells us why we do it, particularly if we ask the right questions on the front end. It tells us how well we do whatever it is that we've measured. It lets us describe how well we know or don't know that we're doing it well. It allows us to get at a point of the improvements and changes and enhancements that we can make, as well as the outcomes that we've seen from the enhancements that we've done in the past. And then moving forward, whether or not the things that we've changed have worked. When we talk about the assessment process and the assessment cycle, it takes all of those pieces and kind of puts them all together into a base cycle, right? Usually with these, you start at the top, and that's no different here. So we start with planning. And at the end of the day, what we want to do is talk about, our plan is our program. But at the same point in time, our plan is also, what do we want to get out of that program? Too often when we're developing programs, even when we're just developing our tools to go out and talk about NSE to other students, assessment's oftentimes the afterthought. The goal of the day is to go out and tell people about NSE. And then maybe at some point you think about, maybe I should ask them if they actually got what I wanted them to get out of my program. And so you put together a quick survey and you hand it out, and maybe they answer it, maybe they don't, maybe it's useful and maybe it's not. The planning part is really all inclusive. You plan your program, and at the same time you plan your program, you plan the assessment that you want to have alongside of it. In that world, then you move into determining your methodology and your metrics. So what are the numbers? What are the things that you want to get information on? What are the specific points? Are you going to do focus groups or interviews? Are you going to have folks write essays? Are you going to administer surveys, look at grade point averages, look at retention rates? All of those pieces, figure out what those are on the front end. And then you get to an implementation stage. That's when you get to the realm of being able to move everything forward and putting your game into play and putting your assessment to work. You collect and you analyze your data, and then you evaluate it. Again, this assessment piece is just collection of the data, collection of the information. Then we look at it subjectively and determine, do we like what we see? The fidelity side is really important. If you do no other assessment, let me really implore that you do some fidelity assessment, because that looks at the extent to which you have delivered what it is you intended to deliver. And so you want to make sure those are in alignment and those that are actually the same. And if not, that you can explain why your end delivering thing, whatever that is different from what it is you set out to deliver. There may be some very good reasons for it, And that's fine, but you need to know why it is that things change. Perhaps it was the weather and you didn't account for it. So maybe next year when you're planning, you account for weather plans. Perhaps it was a national tragedy, or a gift, a donor gave everybody at the campus lots and lots of money. And so the tides changed, right? All of these things can affect your, the extent to which the program you wanted to deliver is the program you actually delivered. So you want to look at those pieces. And then this second to last point of reporting and strategizing is arguably one of the most important ones, because it doesn't do you any good to collect information, look at it and say, boy, this looks great, and then put it up on a shelf, or to store it in your hard drive where it can gain some digital dust. We want to tell people about it. You want to get back to your stakeholders. You want to get back to the folks who took the time to fill out your survey and tell them, hey, here's what you told us, and here's what we're thinking about doing as a result. You want to get back to the folks who fund you on your campuses and say, hey, Vice President so-and-so, hey, Dr. so-and-so, hey, Professor, President, Vice Provost, whatever. Here's what National Student Exchange is doing and how we can measure it and what we know as a result. Really, really important that you don't just collect information and not share it. It's a waste of your time to put the measures together, to analyze it, to put it away. It's a waste of your respondents' times. And then it's just simply, in my mind, there's a lack of disrespect for the folks that are funding you and keeping you afloat from not telling them what's happening. Once you've gotten through that reporting and that strategizing in terms of what it is that you're going to do, that gives you that opportunity to retool, refine, reimagine the work that you're doing. I want to point out, though, in all of this at the core, and I mentioned this a little bit early on, the mission, the vision, and the values of your organization, both your institution and NSE, and then if there's departmental components in between there, need to be reflected in your work. You've got to be able to relate everything. This level of relevance is really, really important to be able to show your campuses and your students why this is such an important and necessary part of their student experience. Talking about planning real quick, I want to dive into this just a little bit. There's this notion of redefining or defining your objectives and outcomes. That's the whole planning piece, right? You don't just put on a program. Your program may very well be out there. Again, let's stick with the recruitment example. We want students to participate in the NSE. And so your broad goal for that program is to get folks to sign up. But you also want to teach them about what NSE is, how it's funded, what their obligations are, what they can get out of it, and things along those lines. And so starting off as you're planning your assessment and your program and doing them together is making sure that those are really, really clear and that you can tie your objectives and outcomes back to your mission, your vision, and your values, both for your department, for NSE, and then also back to the institutional piece. Allie can share with you that she and I have had this conversation often in terms of where do things tie and the importance of making sure that thread can be drawn all the way through everything that you're doing. I also want to dive into this reporting piece real quick, although it's really a recap of what I've already said. It's really important that you share what you've learned with your stakeholders. And then also that you try to figure out how to develop those ways to bridge the gaps that exist between what you wanted to happen and what actually happened. Clearly, if what you wanted to happen was to everybody have a 3.0 cumulative GPA as a result of their participation, and they ended up with a 3.5, you don't have to bridge that gap. They did better than you wanted them to. But if the goal was a 3.0 and everybody got a 2.6, then there's a problem and you need to figure those pieces out. When you're looking at different kinds of assessment, there's lots of different kinds of assessment. There are complete books written on and to some extent, all of these things, and then many, many, many more. But these are the ones I tend to live and work with the most. Attendance simply tells you who's there. It's a nice head count. It's a number. You can break it out by very demographic information and get some good insight in terms of who's sitting in front of you, who's participating in your program. You can slice and dice it. The needs assessment is just as important because this tells you what the needs are or could be for the group of students or the group of administrators or the group of campuses that you're working with. And so this is not just about talking to students and saying, what do you need to know? Your stakeholders, you can do a needs assessment amongst them. You should be doing conversations with your peers and figuring out what would be useful for other campuses engaged in this kind of work to know, so that you can then discuss collectively, is that something that we all want to work towards? Is that something David and Deborah would like for us to be working on, and then work towards those aspects. But asking people what it is that they want from your program is a really, really important step. Too often we move down the road of, we know what's best, and so that's what we're going to offer. Well, we knew what was best at one point, but it's really important that we gain the folks that want to play with us and gain their perspective in terms of what they know and what they'd like to know as a result of working with us. Satisfaction is important, but it cannot be the end-all be-all. Please do not ever administer just a survey that asks about how satisfied people were. Rationale behind that is there's more to a program than just liking what they saw. You also need to know, did they get out of it what you want? And satisfaction doesn't get you that information. You can do learning outcomes measures and learning outcomes assessment. This is clearly that next step, right? This is where you identify what it is you want folks to get out of the fact that they participated, or what they can now do as a result of having been there. And then you can relate back and get a sense of where were they before they came to your program, whether that's an information session, whether that's a pre-departure meeting, whether that's during or after a semester abroad. You want to be able to look and see where were they beforehand, where were they afterwards, and be able to tie that back to their attendance at whatever segment of that program that you're delivering. And then the fidelity assessment that I talked about earlier, ensuring that you're delivering what you set out to deliver. And if not, you can explain why. A couple different methods of assessment to be thinking about. So these are not exactly these are not assessment types. We're not talking about surveys, focus groups, et cetera today. But your methods of assessment, these are a higher order component, and looking at both indirect assessment and direct assessment. And it's important to me that folks get a refresher on this every now and again. And so if you've already learned this, great. Hopefully this will just help contribute to what it is that you've known and give you a different language for talking about. But we often conflate these two pieces, or we try to take information that we collect in an indirect manner and say for certain that it's a direct measurement. And they're really not. They're very different. An indirect assessment gives us information about learning based on students or your participants' personal reflections. It's about what participants think they know or think they can do. They don't have to demonstrate it to anybody. They don't have to show anybody what it is that they've done. This is on a scale of 1 to 5, how likely are you to be able to do something? Or for example, here, on a scale of 1 to 5, or on a scale from strongly agree to strongly disagree, please answer the following question. I know where to go to get information about the National Student Exchange. Strongly agree to strongly disagree. They can tell you strongly agree and then have absolutely no clue where your office is, right? There's no way for you to know whether or not they actually know that information. So this is what they think they know. Some forms of indirect measures, these are your types, right? Some evaluations, satisfaction surveys, feedback, interviews, some focus groups can be done in this way. Post-assessments that don't have anything on a pretest, so you don't know where they were before they came to you, you only know where they are afterwards. Reflections when you don't discuss learning. So when all you're doing is asking about how did you feel when you landed on the ground for your exchange experience? That's a really great question, but it's wholly reflective in nature, and so it's an indirect measure. There's nothing wrong with indirect measures, but you can only go so far with them. It's not a measure of quote unquote truth. It's not a measure of what actually is. It's a measure of what students think or what your constituents think is going on. Direct assessment, on the other side, gathers data based on observation. It's where students or your constituents are able to display or demonstrate what they know or what it is that they are able to do. So this is where, instead of asking them on a scale of 1 to 5 where they would go, or how confident they are that they could find that information, this is where outright you ask them to write down, where would you go or with whom would you consult to get information about the program? This direct assessment ensures that you know that they know what it is they need to do next. So that's a very simple example, but hopefully it kind of draws that line between the two in terms of lots of different ways of collecting this information. Like I said, there are books written about many of these. A quick search of the internet will give you lots of information. The Student Affairs Assessment Leaders Group, there's a website out there. Just Google that, it'll come right up. And there are some tools on that website as well. And I know that Allie is going to highlight a little bit of a toolkit that's being put together by this subcommittee for NSE. And there's a lot of really good opportunities and measurements there that can be used as well. On the other side of assessment, beyond indirect and direct, is formative versus assessment. Formative versus summative, excuse me. And this is really, really short. This is formative is information you collect along the way so that you can make changes on the fly. Summative is information that you collect at the end of an experience that you use to plan for the next experience. So be thinking about what information can you collect in the middle that allow you to make some tweaks to hopefully enhance your outcomes or your programmatic desires. And then on the summative side, what's information you want to get at the end to demonstrate that you've met your stated goals and outcomes so that you can get to that point. I keep talking about mission and vision and goals and objectives and outcomes. This is a really nice graphic, and I'll make sure that Allie's got it so she can include just this graphic without the slide deck in the toolkit. But this is a really nice way of kind of envisioning from a top down what it is that you're doing or trying to get to as you're talking about your mission, etc. Your mission always answers the question why we exist. It's not a paragraph, it's a sentence, two at tops, but it should be memorizable. It should be very easily regurgitated when asked for it, right? It really just says National Student Exchange exists to do X, and that's it. Very, very clear and concise. Your vision is where you want to be. Oftentimes we like to take our mission statement and say, we exist to do these things and we want to have X and Y and Z and A and B and Q and 26 and 34 and all of those things to happen at the end of the day. That's good, but it's its own statement. Your vision statement really is its own realm of where it is that you want to be at the end of the day or the end of the year or the end of the decade, the end of the millennium, whatever, right? In between the mission and the vision, are your values. Your values of your organization inform both up to your mission and down to your vision and then permeate throughout the rest of your initiatives. Below your vision is your goals. This is what you have to achieve for success. And so your mission tells you why you're here. Your vision says where you hope to be down the road. The goals define what it is you need to do right now to fulfill today's mission. And then everything below that gets into the realm of your objectives, which talk about the measurable things you're going to get at to say, yes, we met our goal. The activities that you're going to do that will help you meet your objectives. And then your measures and your outcomes is how you report on it. And those bottom two are at the base because it's the base for everything. Your mission, the why we exist, has to be supported by the measures and the outcomes that you are able to discuss and bring to bear for everyone else so that you can actually have that broader conversation. So with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions that may have come across the chat. If there aren't any now, that's fine. This is not a speak now or forever hold your peace. My email is there. Please feel free to reach out to me. If you don't remember it or can't find it, reach out to Allie or David or Deborah or Robert, and they can all get a hold of me as well. I'm happy to help however I can in the fullness of time. But with that, I'll yield to Allie and David and see what questions may exist out there right now.
Thank you so much, Matt. I don't see any questions coming through yet. So we're gonna bump to Robert Gerard. Robert has been a grad for our program here at Iowa State, and each year we have something that Matt actually started, we call it Assestivus, so it's really an assessment celebration. And Robert, we prepared a poster for that last year. So he's gonna share just a little bit about that with all of you, and then also highlight the focus group that we do every single term for all of our returners.
All right, great, thank you. So I'm going to get this up on the screen real quick. Hello again, everyone. For anyone who wasn't here when we first started, my name is Robert. I am the grad assistant for Iowa State's office, and these are some things that Allie and I have been working on over the last year and a half. So as Allie kind of already said, Matt has been kind of the mastermind behind this inaugural Student Affairs and Learning Symposium that we do every year. And this past year, in spring 2019, we decided we want to kind of take the opportunity to look inward at NSC and see what are we doing for the students that are coming here and how can we make sure we are serving them as best as possible. So we kind of put together some data we've been collecting and decided that this would help us in several ways. One, just kind of at a glance knowing why are students choosing Iowa State, where are they coming from, what are their interests, and then also really seeing how our campus and community is growing from it, how the NSC participants are growing from it. And honestly, this really getting to look at this data was really cool because we also kind of got to see for the upcoming tour that we will be giving at conference here in just a couple months, yay, what are maybe some areas of interest that you all will want to see while you're here based on what your students want to see when they're at Iowa State. So we kind of took this data, put it all together, and broke it down into where are folks coming from, what are they studying, or what are their declared majors, and then kind of what did they say about their experience, as well as just looking a little bit about the fact that some people have such a great time here, they decide they want to finish their degree program here, and what has that brought the institution. So looking at this first section here, it was really great to see that we kind of get students from all over the US and Canada. This graphic just highlights in green, the darker the color, the more students come from there. As you can see, Puerto Rico is repping very hard for us. But it was really great to see that we get people who come from every region and not just a concentrated area, which helps us understand that NSE really is a great opportunity to connect all of our institutions and all of our states, provinces, territories. It's just overall, it's really fantastic in that respect. Additionally, we got to look at, well, Iowa State, when you think of Iowa compared to a lot of the destinations, people don't necessarily think about like the travel luxury or anything. Oftentimes they think about like, oh, well, this is a school that has excellent academic programs. So what are they studying when they come here? We kind of broke it down in this fun little word cloud that was meant to resemble the United States. I think it did an all right job. But getting to really break down the numbers and see that a lot of our students identified as coming from an engineering background or an animal science or biology background helps us kind of anticipate what future students might be coming here for and how we can make sure that we are best representing their interests when they are here. And that kind of took us to looking back at some feedback that we are collecting every semester now, where we make sure we have an exit survey for them as they leave our campus at the end of the semester. Pardon me. And just pulling some choice quotes, but as well really getting to look at like how they are identifying their experience overall in the program. And the vast majority of our participants have really gotten to feel like they've become part of the community while they're here. They feel like our office supports them and gives them meaningful programming. And kind of getting to see all of that helps us sharpen up what we could be doing better or where we need to be looking for really growing this opportunity for incoming students. Which that is kind of where we talk about the outside stakeholders, the other members of the Department of Student Affairs here at Iowa State, and them seeing that these students are coming here and have an excellent time can help, you know, get us maybe some more support to get ourselves advertised around campus, get our name through the door for, hey, students come here and have a great experience at Iowa State. Why not have more Iowa State students really go out and make this a normalized part of their curriculum while they're here as full-time students? And again, just to kind of emphasize, I guess, when you're communicating with the stakeholders at your institution of what does NSE bring to the table, you can also talk about, well, you know, some students come to the school and decide after a while that maybe they do want to transfer here as well and finish out their degree program. And what does that look like monetarily, since that's always, you know, a point of concern. So just at a glance, that was our presentation. And I'm just going to briefly jump over to our other document for our focus groups. And this is more on the flip side of looking at the sort of questions we like to ask our students here at Iowa State when they come back. What we do is we invite them to lunch. It's covered by our office, and we ask them some entry-level questions about why did you choose NSE? How were your experiences when you were making that transition to your new school? Progressively hitting questions that go over academics, go over their travel experience, their work or extracurricular experiences, and then also even challenging them to think about, how did you grow? How do you think differently about the world now? What is something that this experience has brought back with you that has really impacted your ability to kind of conceptualize where you are now and where you want to be? So we generally invite them to lunch, record the sessions with them, and then we have been having transcripts put together that we are starting to code and really pull out kind of commonalities in people's experiences, and really great choice quotes so that we can kind of turn around and make sure that future NSE participants are really able to see what their fellow cyclists are saying about the program. I think I've covered everything I was going to. Allie, do you want to jump back in?
Yeah, thanks, Robert. So I'm still not seeing any questions, which is fine. The other thing that we wanted to highlight for all of you is the toolbox that the assessment committee has been working on. So I'm going to share that with you. So when you go to nse.org and log in, we'll be here under resources. Just go to assessment. And we're still building this, but certainly there's a little bit here to start. And really our goal is that when you are ready or need to do some assessment, you can come here and find what you need to do that and some examples of what other people have done. Kimberly was going to join us today to talk a little bit about creating a culture of assessment in her office, but she is sick, so we will send her good thoughts and she will fill us in the future on that. But if you weren't aware of this toolbox yet, hopefully you can utilize it. There, I put our Iowa State, the NSE annual report, which we would invite others to send samples if you do an annual report and you're willing to share. We'd love to include it here. There are some more articles that we have, but there's one here to start with. Some sample surveys. Deborah will be sharing this with us here in a little bit, and that will be updated as the semesters go by. Exit interview, the focus group questions, which Robert just went over. So yeah, I wanted to make sure you were aware of that. And I feel like, did I see one question? I thought I saw a chat or question pop up.
Yeah, Birgit from Binghamton just asked if Robert can share his questionnaire, but then I believe that Robert's questionnaire is actually included here, probably the exit interview questions.
Yes.
That's in the assessment toolbox here. So Birgit, you can access it here.
Yes. Let me see. Wonderful. Okay, no other questions. I wanted to make sure you saw that. Hopefully, I mean, I think as Matt shared, one thing that I wrote down just as a starting point, because I know across the consortium, people are at different points in their assessment or how much they're doing on a routine basis in their program. So, I mean, hopefully as a starter, you can make sure that you're articulating how your institution and divisional mission and vision statements show up in your work and how NSE contributes to those. One other thing I want to show you before I pass it to Deborah is the NSE learning, or are the NSE learning outcomes, which were developed by the assessment committee last year and council signed off on, so they are done and final. And so this document will also be on the toolbox and accessible for all of you. So if you aren't kind of aware of these and they're not on your mind, just beware that they will be available for you. Okay, Deborah, I'm going to pass to you.
Okie dokie, here I am. I was just thinking that we had posted those learning outcomes someplace else on the site, but I should probably show my presentation instead of looking for that right now. Anyway, it's definitely on the list of things that we want to get rolling. So Allison asked me to do a repeat kind of short synopsis of our student survey from last spring. Hold on, I'm not sharing correctly yet. Is everybody giving me the thumbs up that that's the right presentation? No.
Yep, you're good to go, Deborah.
Oh, okay.
Just
Is
put
it in
present
presentation mode?
It's
Oh,
not.
okay. Okay, there we go. That one?
Yep, perfect.
Okay. And so I think what Allie was starting to share with the formation of the assessment committee, there was a strong desire to share this kind of information and assess our students and where they are at as far as national student exchange occurs. but we knew that we had to put a few things in place before that happened. These originated with the assessment subcommittee of the NSE Council, which was created the committee was created in spring of 2015, and a new mission statement and vision statement and value statement were created for National Student Exchange. And then based upon those NSE learning outcomes that Allison just shared with you were put into place. And just as a reminder, here's the NSE learning outcomes. So then with spring of 2019, and prior to that, actually, I think it took about maybe 2 years to write this survey because we wanted to be very precise about this, but it was very focused on construction of survey questions related to these specific learning outcomes. And then in spring 2019 was the first time that we sent this assessment out and collected information from our students while they were out on exchange. We had just under 30% response rate from our questionnaire in the spring. That first learning outcome, 98% of students indicated that NSE helped them demonstrate confidence in personal independence, adaptability, problem solving, and goal accomplishments. Sorry, I'm having difficulty advancing my slides. There we go. 85% of students, respondents indicated that NSE helped them illustrate understanding of historical and intercultural values of the home and host campus and establish relationships of interest. Did I go too far in my slides? I did, sorry. Okay, this is where I meant to be, I apologize. 96% of students indicated that NSE helped them demonstrate confidence in personal independence. 85% of students indicated that NSE helped them illustrate understanding of the historical and cultural context of the home and host campus, and then also differentiate contrasting viewpoints of the home and host campus culture. 87% of students indicated that NSE helped them understand the home and host values of their campus, and then also that they established relationships of empathy and respect in the host campus community. 89% of students indicated that NSE helped them differentiate contrasting viewpoints of the home and host culture. 93% of students indicated under the learning outcome of differentiating contrasting viewpoints of the home and host culture and establishing relationships of empathy and respect in the home and host community that NSE was helpful in doing this. The students listed a lot of open answer questions about the value of National Student Exchange. The most prominent thing that they shared for prospective students that might be considering NSE was just do it. 94% of students talked about this being able to interact with different people and different backgrounds, something that we constantly stress with NSE, and that pertained to that fifth learning outcome of establishing relationships. 89% of students indicated satisfaction with the academic experience while they are on exchange, and that pertained to the learning outcome about academic perspective, future employment, and professional practice. One of the things that we asked was how students were considering whether NSE affected their career options or internships in graduate school, and we saw that many students felt that it pertained to looking at career options, but fewer students used NSE to pursue internships or graduate school. 71% of students indicated an overall satisfaction with exchange support, and 88% of students indicated overall satisfaction with the exchange experience. So the demographic of the students from the spring semester was that most students were 20 years old in their third year of college. Obviously, we recognize that over half of our students participate in their junior year, and a little bit about most of the students lived on campus. A few did not receive an orientation, and that's one that we're trying to change with how we attend to our students. We know that most of our students participating in NSE are female. 28% of the students that responded to this survey were students of color. So to give you an idea about where these questions will be for the spring, again, we're asking the same questions this fall semester and pertaining to the learning outcomes that we had set forth, or that the assessment committee had set forth for NSE. We currently have, I believe, a 36% response rate from students on exchange in the fall semester. So we'll begin to build on this survey, and we'll have longitudinal data that will hopefully begin to frame and support exactly what our goals need to be for NSE and how you can report this value on your home campus.
There is one more thing that I wanted to highlight that came up in the assessment committee meeting that we had earlier this week. There are some of us as campuses that make sure we check and are keeping track of some descriptive metrics. And let me go to my annual report and just show you, because Kimberly suggested making sure that we highlighted this, which I think is a good point. So this is in my annual report, which you all can access. So just tracking graduation rate. So hopefully you can go back in your student information system. And once you have this built, it's pretty easy to maintain. And maybe a lot of you are already doing that. So yeah, so I wanted to highlight that. Any questions from any of you? I see we have almost 30 people, so that's great. Or panelists, if you have anything you want to add.
Allison, I would probably pipe in there about the calculating the graduation rates, maybe including that table and then talking about the specific things and how you collected it and how it went into, just like a quick 5-second, because some people, if this is new to them, they might not know how you were grabbing that data at Iowa State, and some very specific ways to collect the data might be helpful.
Sure.
That would be something to put in the toolbox, I'm thinking.
Yeah, we just have an Excel kind of database that we use to keep it. And so then as our students come through, we use our student information system. For us, it's called Access Plus, though I imagine it's most definitely something different on your campus. So we check once a year, sometimes more, to see when a student has graduated, and then record that so we can keep accurate information. Yeah.
Excellent.
I wanted to jump in real quick. So I do some similar assessment on my campus, certainly surveys of outbound students and returning students. I've not done focus groups, and I think that'd be awesome to do. I'm going to start doing that. I will say, utilize campus resources that you have on campus. And I'm on a giant research campus as well. There are colleagues on campus that have volunteered to help anybody on campus that's interested in doing more assessment. And so that's something to reach out to colleagues on campus, figure out if you have somebody like Matt on your campus that will help you design an assessment strategy for your program.
Yes, and we are always welcoming more people on the assessment committee. So if you're interested and want to join us, we would love to welcome you to the table.
And let me add on to David's comment real quick, is that even if you don't have a position like mine on your campus, you certainly have faculty who teach statistics on your campus. You have faculty who teach qualitative methods, usually in sociology, psychology, education. And so reach out to the faculty members on your campuses as well. They are happy to engage usually in these kinds of things. It counts as institutional service for them. Sometimes it can even reach into the realm of research and publications for all of you. So take advantage of where you actually work and those resources available to you as well.
That's awesome. And I will say that Deborah, I know, has been involved in conversations with campuses who are at risk of losing the NSE program. And if those campuses that have been able to pull out some assessment data, have reinforced their NSE program, saved it in some cases. And so, maybe NSE is not at risk on your campus, but certainly as I think Ali said, or Matt said as well, when you're requesting funding, maybe increased funding, having assessment, this data is crucial to justify the continuation of your program as well as the potential growth of your program.
And I don't know where kind of everyone is at with what they're tracking, but On our annual report, we have been tracking how many people are coming to info sessions. And so if you're not sure where to start, look at some of the samples that are there, and that can provide a good starting point, some baseline stuff.
So I'll remind everybody, if you have questions or comments, put them in the chat window. Does anybody have anything else to add? Ali, Matt, Robert, Deborah?
No.
Sounds great. Well, I really appreciate the panelists. Ali, you did a lot of work pulling this together. And thank you so much for Matt for joining us today. Robert, I know you do a lot of work with NSE as well, serving on multiple committees, actually. So really appreciate all of your time and contributions to this. Birgit says, great job, everybody. Very enlightening. I agree. This was wonderful. So I'm going to stop the recording now.
Good to see you all down the road.